You're listening to the Call Kent podcast, where Kent C. Dodds answers questions and gives insights to software engineers like you. Now, let's hear the call.
Hey Kent, my name's Ricardo. Hope you're doing well. With server components getting more traction, this idea of each component being able to fetch its own data seems to be getting more popular rather than data fetching being purely route-based. In Remix land, you've had a talk about full-stack components with a similar concept where a resource route can have no default exports, but still export a loader and a React component that consumes it in order to have a reusable component with its own data fetching. It seems like there might be some differences between server components and these full-stack components, though, especially in that server components don't need to be defined in routes, but Remix full-stack components do. So firstly, how are the two approaches different? I ask because I know Remix is working on implementing server components without the footguns, so just curious how the mental model will change in the future. And you also said it isn't a good practice to get into to commonly import components from other routes. So my second question is, why is it not a good practice? And can you give examples for cases where it would or wouldn't make sense to import full-stack components from other routes? Thank you, and I hope you and your family enjoy the rest of your weekend. Cheers.
And that was the call. Here's what Kent had to say.
Hey, Ricardo, thank you so much for the question. So there are a couple in here that we'll want to address. I'll start with one of the last things that you asked, actually, and that is how I say it's not typically a good practice to import between routes. So you don't want to import the loader from one route into another route, or different things like that. The primary reason for that is because it can violate the principle of least surprise, which is like if I say, oh, this loader over here looks exactly like the loader for the edit note page looks exactly like the loader for the display note page, because we're loading the title and we're loading the content for both of them. Those two loaders look identical. So I'll just, in the edit page, I'll just import the loader from the display page. And now I don't have to write that loader twice. There's a danger in there because when I'm working in the regular note page and I'm editing the loader, my expectation is that the only consumer of that is myself. And so I can make all kinds of changes that I want to. And if I'm using that elsewhere, then I'll be surprised. And that can cause problems. I can trigger or cause bugs in the edit page. Luckily with TypeScript and the fact that TypeScript works across that network boundary into the UI, it should hopefully catch any issues. But that's what I mean when I say you don't want to import things from other routes. You will occasionally do this, import the loader from a parent route so that you can get the types, so you can use that in your meta function and stuff like that. But yeah, most of the time you want to avoid importing things across routes. Another exception is these full stack components. So as far as how full stack components, for folks just listening, if you've never heard of a full stack component before, then I'm going to defer you over to or refer you over to the blog post. Give that a read through. It's a really cool pattern in Remix. So full stack components are similar in spirit to server components, but there are a number of differences. So for one, the full stack components, those components hydrate on the client. And so they're 100% server rendered and then client hydrated, which means you get to do all of the normal things that you'd want to do in the client UI. But it also means that all of the code necessary for that component to hydrate needs to be sent to the UI, where server components, because they don't hydrate, you don't need to send any of the code that's necessary for the server part of that component. And then you have holes for your client interactivity stuff. So server components technically win on that aspect of comparison. The other thing is the full stack components require a route, whereas server components don't require a route. You can just use them anywhere you want. And so with a full stack component, if you need some initial data, you need to make sure that whatever route you're using them in loads that initial data so that it can feed it into the full stack component. And then that full stack component can continue to interact with its own route thereafter. So that is definitely a bit of a drawback. there are some benefits to it having a route, because now you have like caching implications and stuff like that, that you can specify, and even special other cache headers, like cookies and stuff like that. So a theme switcher is a good example of this, where your theme route that is part of your full stack component can actually set and unset cookies and things like that. So that is nice. So yeah, anyway, Remix is definitely working on integrating, kind of combining these two ideas. And I haven't seen any of their plans recently, and I know they've tried out a lot of different things that they're going to be working on soon as V2 is out the door, which should be anytime soon, I think. But there are a couple subtle differences between the ideas of full stack components and resource routes, and server components. Let me think. As far as the mental model changing, I think that the mental model shouldn't change a lot, except, well, it really depends on how Remix implements these components. But yeah, I do expect that it will be Remix's implementation of server components will still allow you to separate the loading and mutations from the component itself, but you will be able to do that within the component without the waterfall problem somehow. But yeah, I'm not totally sure, and I'm not a member of the Remix team anymore anyway, so I can't really give you any specific insider knowledge either. So there are some subtle differences. Full stack components have some benefits over server components, and server components will have some benefits over full stack components. I do think that when Remix has built-in support for server components, that there will be a better solution for both of these things. So you will not necessarily use full stack components as they appear today. It will probably be pretty similar, though, as far as the mental model is concerned. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you for asking, and have a nice day.
This has been the Call Kent podcast. Learn more about Kent at kentcdodds.com and get your own questions answered at kentcdodds.com/calls.